Welcome back. So, David, another domestically shocking incident. Again, you're kind of sipping your coffee, and then you see this headline. You're like, sorry, what? The Nazi in Parliament drama.
Yes.
Unpack that. What happened there?
So they had invited, President Zelensky was in town. He was addressing Parliament, and they had invited a World War II veteran from Ukraine who lives in Canada. I guess they had failed to vet what side he had fought for in World War II. So he was with a Ukrainian unit that served with the Nazis. And so a rather embarrassing faux pas on the part of the then Speaker of the House, Anthony Rota, whom essentially had all of our parliamentarians cheer a man who served alongside the Nazis in World War II. And there was a lot of kerfuffle over how did it happen. I think the moral of the story is we expect better from our politicians.
Like there's a process.
Yes.
We vet people who come to Parliament and are honored in Parliament, and you're wondering, well, how did that get through?
Yeah, and anyone with even an ounce of historical perspective on World War II would go, okay, so he's from Ukraine and he fought against the Russians. Wait a second. That means that he most likely fought with the Nazis.
And again, like there's context there, and you're right. So the Ukrainians are fighting against the Russians now, and I think people forget their history, that they were, yes, fighting against the Russians in World War II, and there were a lot of temporary and permanent allegiances being formed throughout Europe.
Yep. Yeah, and it doesn't help that the individual in question wasn't a conscript. So he wasn't drafted into the army. He was a volunteer.
Yeah.
That makes it a little more complicated and difficult. But at the end of the day, we just expect better from our politicians and, more importantly, their staff,
yes,
who are supposed to be paid to vet these.
Right.
We've spent a lot of time ridiculing politicians for taking pictures with the wrong people.
Yes.
Right? If that is the standard we have, then this is just an egregious mistake on the part of the then speaker, who then resigned. Obviously.
Yeah, he had to fall on his sword, and he resigned. Gender debate in schools. This really seemed to kind of reach a climax this year. In my previous work, and maybe even current, I don't know, I've been very vocal about this issue. But I really feel there has been a renewed groundswell from parents that they're really upset with the gender ideology in schools now.
Yeah, we saw those protests at school boards across the country. I think a lot of the debate was framed very poorly on both sides. So you had the concerned parents calling those who advocate for more inclusive gender education, all sorts of nasty names that I can't necessarily repeat on TV. And then on the other side, concerned parents were called bigots and hateful because they had some legitimate concerns. And on our program, we actually ended up interviewing a trans woman who made I think what really, in my opinion, summarizes the nuance of the debate. If a child has severe gender dysphoria, they need to have medical treatment. If they need, let's say, gender affirming care. If they need medical treatment, you have to inform the parents. And so,
well, yes and no. You inform the parents if they don't have capacity to consent, but that's very subjective in various jurisdictions. For example, like in Ontario.
That is true. That is true. But you would not want to delay medical care in any sense.
Right.
In the same way that if a child goes to school and is displaying signs of a different condition, the teacher's probably going to tell the parent, hey, we're noticing X about your child. It may require a doctor. Trying to turn teachers into like the gatekeepers of secrets is just a very difficult issue, right? You put a lot of weight on teachers then to decide when or when not to disclose. And then, of course, come report card time, there's a whole nother discussion, because when you issue a report card, are you referring to the child by their previous name and dead naming them?
Yes.
Or outing them and using their preferred name. And so the issue is
I think you're right by mentioning that this I think places an unnecessary burden on teachers, that really it's a parent-child situation that the schools while sometimes they may feel that way, they really aren't an extension of the home. The home is the home, and the parent and the child have that unique bond, and the teachers are there to educate, and the school boards should not be, and the government, it's really a provincial government thing, they should not be placing this burden on the teachers. I think it was I think a good year for parental rights. I hopefully we'll see what happens in the new year on that. We'll be right back.